And just feel free to introduce yourself and let us know about your plugs and where we can find you and your Instagram page. And then we'll just talk about whatever you got lined up for us.
Sure. Guess we'll just start with like who I am, what I do, stuff like that. So you guys have kind of a feel for everything about me. I spent 6 years in the Air Force. I got out, went to college, contracted for the Marshals. I am currently a deputy in Nebraska. I also run the Books Behind the Badge page and podcast where I partner with other first responders, promote reading amongst not only first responders, but just kind of everybody in general. I'm trying to bring people together and show people that, hey, people that are in the first responder realm are also people too. We have hobbies. And I partner with different authors, get people on, we chat, shoot the shit, talk about books. I help promote books. I review books, all things books pretty much.
You have a podcast?
Yeah, I do.
I did not know that. Cool.
Yep. Say under the same tag, just Books Behind the Badge. Yep. It's on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Hobbies, reading, of course, and jujitsu and beer. Books, beer, and BJJ. So 3 Bs.
Sweet.
So pretty much I'm open to talk about whatever. I pulled a few books down from the bookshelf. Really kind of a plethora of topics. I read a lot and I don't like to get locked in like an echo chamber of, oh, I only read on this. Obviously my page is kind of a niche where it is not only, it's like books, because you have like the Instagram world, and then you have a lot of first responder pages. I try and be pretty broad with what I read. I read about 50 books a year or so. So I do read a lot. I have a lot of books that we can talk about, or just life in general, but I did pull a few down just to chat about if whatever you guys are interested in, really. If you guys have a specific genre or type of book that you're looking for, I probably have something for you. So
cool. I'll tell you about our group a little bit. We have, I don't know, 12 to 15 dudes here. I think everyone's a dude, although we allow quite a bit of anonymity. The primary purpose for this is a twice monthly video session. So what we're doing right now is one of them. We do at least 2 a month of these, and we'll bring in experts from other fields, or people in our community will show up and teach the others. And it's primarily for skill set building. Mm-hmm. But also we find ourselves down the rabbit hole of, advice and helping, and we're building a little bit of a community here. So that's kind of the theme that we have going on.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. And like I said, yeah, I'm not going to pretend to like that I'm an expert in one realm. Like I said, I don't try and like narrow in on one thing. So, jack of all trades, I guess. I try and keep an open mind. That's why I don't like to read like only one thing. I will get into anything, even if it's an opposing thing that I don't agree with. I'll read about it just so I have an understanding of it. So I think that's important, especially, I mean, if you're going to talk about, building skills, and I think life in general, just being a human, kind of, especially in the realm of, technology and social media and everything, it is kind of becoming a skill. So I try and leave it open and be as nuanced as possible with everything. So. But yeah, if anybody has questions or wants to know anything specifically, a recommendation for books or anything like that, feel free to, chime in, and I'll try and get you something. I don't have, my whole bookshelf in front of me. Obviously that would take up like half this room, but I can always pop on Instagram and probably pull up some books for you guys too.
Would you have a problem if we stripped the audio from this after we were done and I threw it up on a podcast episode?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be perfect.
I feel like that would just fit really well. So we'll plan for that. Cool.
For sure. So I don't obviously know everybody's background here, what everybody is into, or what type of skills everybody here is, looking to hone in on and stuff. Do have a few books. I just pulled like 6 books off the shelf. Got first I have Varg Freeborn. I don't know if that's how you Varg. I'm not sure, but Violence of Mind. He's kind of underground-ish, but he does have definitely like a niche in the realm of, training tactics, specifically when it comes to violence and the mindset that you need to have when you address, those kind of situations. This is the first of 2 books that he has. I have his other one, which is called Beyond OODA, and that kind of dives into the OODA loop process and obviously, as the title says, beyond, mostly focusing on the orientation aspect of it. But violence of mind is essentially, like the title says, the subtitle, training and preparedness for extreme violence. And a lot of what I try and do, I am a DT instructor with my agency, and a lot of what I push for my guys, especially because I would imagine, I know that you were law enforcement at some point. I'm sure some of the other guys in your group are too. Clearly, we all know that we don't train enough really with anything in our career field, specifically defensive tactics. I mean, for crying out loud, we go hands on quite a bit in our career field, even if it's just a routine arrest, that's just how it is. And I think a lot of defensive tactics we're not training enough. So what I like to push is the mindset, right? Because you can have your mindset turned on 24/7, regardless of if, you're training 24/7, like somebody like myself who likes to train a few times a week. Not everybody can do that. Nobody has the money or the time or the drive really to do that. So I think mindset is a huge thing, especially if you're going to get into a physical altercation, especially as a law enforcement officer, right? Because as you guys know, if you're in a physical altercation as a cop, you're going to have a gun on you, right? So you're already it's already going to be an extremely violent scenario, whether you want it to be or not. And there's ways to approach that, but having the right mindset and that, knowing that, I'm going to be the one that goes home, and all the cliche other sayings, but and I like the Nebraska Academy. Probably shouldn't blast them, but they have this whole like what do they call it? Survival mindset is like what they preach. They preach it throughout the whole academy. Well, I honestly think that that's a load of shit. I think that you need to have a winning mindset rather, because what does surviving mean, right? Surviving could mean, sure, I survived this encounter, I got away, and now I'm going to be with a colostomy bag the rest of my life, but I survived, right? Whereas a winning mindset is, no, I'm going to fucking win. I'm going to do what I have to do to win and not just survive. And I think that there's a lot to be said there. When I was in the Air Force, so the rest of the Air Force has, God, I can't even remember what it's called. It's essentially like a down day for the year for like all the Air Force, for like a mental health kind of awareness and like decompression, essentially. Security forces, so I was a cop in the Air Force, it's a little bit different because obviously we still have to work. So we get what's called Defender's Edge, and I was a Defender's Edge instructor. And there was a lot of, videos and stories and stuff that we would rely on to kind of push that mindset, mentality, attitude as well, where if you're there's like, I'm, like I said, I'm not an expert in any of these realms by any mean, but there has been at least anecdotal evidence, showing that mindset can be what saves your life, right? There's been instances where somebody has been, maybe like whatever it is, that's not necessarily a life-threatening, incident, but because where their mindset was at and that placebo effect, which has merit to it, they froze, they stopped fighting. They said, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Well, that mindset led them to eventually die. Whereas there's been people that have literally been shot in the fucking heart and they fought for another, 10 seconds before they died. Right. And that was because that mindset, I'm not down, like, I'm hit, but I'm going to continue fighting. So that's kind of what I enjoyed about this book. It kind of encompasses like the entire idea of, where's your mind? You need to have your mind in the fight and not be thinking about other shit, not be, thinking, oh, I'm going to fucking lose. You need to be there. I'm going to win 100% of the time, a winning mindset. And a little bit about Varg, if you're interested in the book, just so you know, like who he is and why.
Let's pull some lessons from each of the books, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
and we'll just
for sure.
What you got out of it, so we can recommend it to people if they're interested.
Yeah, I mean, from that, what I got out of it was the mindset portion, right?
Okay,
like
cool.
It just kind of further solidified, what I already believed in and put kind of, his take on it and his like evidence on it. So,
we had a guy in our circle. We do an annual homesteading event here at the farmstead in Texas, and we have people come from all over the country. And our keynote speaker last year was a guy that has a very like top tier trained protection dog, and carries concealed, and he's physically fit, and he works in an office setting. And the guy said, for some reason, he's like, I'm just not going to bring my dog to work today. But he did carry, and he's at work, and some guy comes through the front door with a machete just in his hand, and just walks in, walks around the counter casually, and chops the girl standing next to him, just starts chopping her in the shoulder and the neck area. And he's like, whoa. And he's like 2 feet away, and he turns and he draws, and the guy is like on him as he's pulling the trigger. And I got goosebumps. So he was our keynote speaker, and he talked a lot about that mindset of like talking to himself during the fight. And he's like, everything slowed down. And I was like, what am I going to do? And he's like, oh, I should do this. Oh, that's not working. And he's like, well, I have to do something. And he's like, I have to dig deep. He's like, I've got to keep going. And he's like, all that self-talk. He's like, that's all he could hear. I don't want to speak for him, but I remember him saying like, that was a big part of the experience, was like him speaking and listening to thoughts going through his head. So I thought that was it. Yeah, of course, that mindset is super a powerful tool that is much better figured out before the fight than after.
Yeah, 100%. And
what's his name? Bubs, do you remember his Instagram handle? Machete James, I think.
Yeah.
Is his at
Machete James. I don't know if that's his Instagram handle, but you should be able to find him in some capacity as Machete James.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up.
And he's a really cool cat.
Machete James. Yeah, and yeah, there's something to be said about that, right? I mean, and what led me down this path, like of these, because I went down like this, like probably like 6-month like journey of after reading The Gift of Fear, which is a super popular book. I think a lot of people have read it. I read that, and then I read, like When Violence is the Answer by Tim Larkin. I read Varg's books, Left of Bang, which is another pretty big one, and there's something like you don't know what people are capable of, right? Like that dude just walks around the counter with a freaking machete. Like you don't know what people are gonna be capable of. So it's like, why underestimate that person? Like have the mindset of, you don't know, man. People are dangerous. You really don't know. So I try not to start shit with people.
Wild World. I haven't read that one yet. Gift of Fear. I've heard about it for a long, long time, and I've heard people talk about it. I just never got to it yet.
Yeah, Gavin DeBecker, he runs a whole, he's got a whole company where that's like all they do is kind of analyze like what people are doing. They work for a lot of big prolific people, I guess, like actors and musicians and shit, where they are hired as like preemptive security.
A good buddy of mine worked for him for quite a while. Has his own book now. If we're recommending books back and forth, my buddy's book is called Man Uncivilized. Super fucking cool. Trevor Boehm on Instagram.
Funny that you mentioned that, because that's actually one of the books that I pulled down. I had it on my podcast.
Dude, yeah. I got 3 books on my shelf right now, and that's one of them.
That's awesome. That's great that you brought that up, man. Yeah. I had him on. He was one of like the first guests I think I had on.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Which is a little bit embarrassing, because that's like, like the first 10 episodes I ever recorded. It's like, I'm still fucking trying to figure things out. And I'm like, you go back and you listen to your shit and you're like, oh, that's so awkward. I was so bad. But
I'm on my second
definitely
podcast.
Could have done a better job.
I have a canine podcast out now, and I'm like, I want to have guests on, like really cool guests. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to schedule people too early, because then they're like in the early episodes. And I'm like, I have this internal struggle of like, well, fuck it, just talk to who you want to talk to. And the other side's like, no, record some more by yourself first. I'm like, just do it.
Right. Yeah. You just got to dive in, man. Like there's no like way around. A lot of people want to like start doing shit, and it's like, you really just got to fucking do it. You can't just worry about
it. Don't matter
other people's opinions or whatever, but it's, it's funny going back and listening to like the earlier episodes. But it's weird. I don't know if like, do you have a lot of guests on your podcast?
The tactical one, I wanted to start doing guests in the beginning, and so it was like a wave function. Like there was guest, me, guest. So it kind of a little inconsistent there with the appearances, but I have a moderate amount of guests on.
I've just like noticed that too with people like Trevor. Like obviously has a little bit of a bigger following, and he's been on a ton of podcasts, so it's like his story's out there. I've noticed that if you have somebody like that on, I actually get like less interaction and like less listens. And I think that's because his story's already out there, for me at least. I don't know.
That could be it. Yeah.
Whereas I have somebody who's like nobody knows about or just a buddy or something, then we shoot this shit and then I get like higher ratings, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird world out there. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah. It's strange. I don't know. I can never figure out social media, honestly. Whatever. It changes seems like it changes every month or two.
Crazy world.
But speaking of Traver, since I had his book out, who led me to Traver, where I first heard about him was on Ryan Mickler's podcast, Order of Man.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has a book called Sovereignty, which I read years and years and years ago. So I don't probably not the greatest person to talk about it, but read his book. Great podcast he has. The book is great. Sovereignty. Let's see. Pretty much about becoming a sovereign man and not, and I know that you have a book called like Fuck Bureaucracy. So it's kind of like
It's very
a little
much
bit in
that
line with
sovereign
that.
vein,
Yeah, 100%. It's not about like, we don't need to rely on fucking other people and like the government to do the shit that we need to do for us, and how to like be your own man and how to, protect, provide, and preside is, I believe, his entire like mantra surrounding like his whole, program and the Order of Man and his podcast and everything. The Battle for Hearts and Minds of Men, Sovereignty. Yeah. It's a good one.
What's the title again?
Sovereignty.
And the subtitle is above it.
The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men.
And give me 1 second to write that for my show notes here. You can keep talking if you want.
Yeah, and that's that's where I found Traver from. He had Traver on his podcast pretty early on, and it's a fucking awesome episode. And that's where I ended up finding out who he was.
And the author one more time, would you mind?
Ryan
Sovereignty.
Mickler.
Ryan Mickler.
Yeah, Michler. And what I kind of like, what I liked about both of these books is like Traver Boehm's is kind of a little bit more liberal, whereas he kind of, just like his whole mentality like on life is a little bit more liberal. Whereas Ryan Mickler's a little bit more conservative. So like if you read both the books kind of in conjunction with each other and meet in the middle, I feel like a lot of a lot of overlapping ground, but just kind of with a different viewpoint. So I think that to me was what was really interesting.
Yeah, I've had several private and intense one-on-one conversations with Traver, and I have stopped myself from asking him for his thoughts on government or politics or things like that. I think he knows my thoughts, but I'm curious. Maybe I'll try and corner him and get an answer from him.
Well, it's funny too. It's just because like you got like people like us, and I try not to like. And like I said, I'm pretty open-minded, but it's like somebody who's in the public servant realm and who is a cop. And I think a lot of cops are pretty against a lot of things that people don't realize. I feel like
I'm trying to tiptoe here.
That's just anecdotally in my area, but yeah.
This is tough. I'm holding my tongue. I don't want to take the episode in too far of an off direction, but yeah, I'm tracking
a rabbit hole. But yeah, both great books. And I like to say like Traver Boehm's book, because honestly, I feel like it was like more than a book. It was like a fucking, I mean, you just had it in your hand. The thing's a fucking brick, dude. It's like glossy, it's heavy, and it's like a ton of art, and it's work art, really.
So we have Bubs on the call here, and he's I don't know what title to give him, but he helps me with a lot of projects. So we collaborate together on almost everything that Uncensored Tactical does. And I think Traver's book is similar to what we do with our content, our products and our services, which I feel like Traver's book is like an experience. It's not like, oh, I read the book. It's like it holds differently in your hands. It looks different than books. It feels like you're not reading a book. So I like that term a lot. And that got pushed onto me by a buddy that he's a cop in Western Colorado, Durango, maybe, if that's the right city. And he's like, dude, I've went to hundreds of rifle courses, and this last one I just got back from, he's like, it was a 5-day course. And from the moment we showed up until the moment we left, he's like, I was on the edge of my seat. He's like, it was just, he's like, it wasn't a rifle course, it was an experience. And I was like, oh my God, I'll call you back, I have to go. Click. And I wrote that down, and I'm like new framing. So everything we do, we try and fit into very specific framing for quality and value, and just the intent of what we do. And I think Trevor's book fits that bill pretty well, which is an experience.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I don't know. It's like, honestly, unlike anything that I have on my shelf. Because it's kind of built like almost like a comic, but it's not a comic, but it feels like if you have like a compendium or like something that's like heavy and big and it's got art in it, but it's, I don't know, the whole thing is just cool as shit. So hey, he did a fantastic job with it. What other books does he have? Because I know he has his first book that he had. I believe it was kind of on his divorce.
I haven't read it, but I want to. That one's called Today I Rise. And I haven't read it yet.
Does he have another one aside from that?
I don't know, but I'm a really fast typer, and his website is his name.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I know Ryan, the sovereignty book guy, he is in the middle of writing another book. I don't actually know what it's about, but it'll probably be done this year, I would imagine. Well,
Just got so nervous. Shit. I thought, oh my God, did I remember to hit record? Because we're like 30 minutes in.
Yeah,
we're good. We're good. We're tracking.
It's recording.
I'm sorry, you were saying about Ryan Mickles?
Oh, Ryan Mickler. Yeah, he's got another book coming out probably this year, I would imagine, because he's fucking banging away on it. He's typing, I don't know, he's set this goal where he's typing X amount of words a day, and he's fucking hammering it out. He's probably almost done.
Mm-hmm.
Have no idea what it's about. I listen to his podcast all the time, so given the content that he puts out, it's probably going to be another fucking stellar book. But definitely looking forward to that. But I do have some other ones. They're kind of broad. I didn't pick anything that was like too honed in on like one, like topic or skill set. Look, I think I read this one last year. Yeah, I did read this one last year because this was one of my like top 5s that I read last year. It's called Taming the Serpent. It's by Michael G. Malpass. I think it's a super underrated book. I feel like it isn't as widespread as it really should be. It's how neuroscience can revolutionize modern law enforcement training. And obviously I'm like a huge proponent for training, DT instructor. I've always had like a interest in, teaching and, giving what limited knowledge that I have, because it is very limited, to other people that are willing to listen and learn and share their ideas with me as well. But he was big into DT too. I mean, obviously still is, but he's retired. I think he's retired now. The whole book is pretty much like getting down to it, like on a scientific level of like what works for training and what doesn't work, and like how your brain reacts to certain like stimuli and shit, and how you can tailor your training to the way that your mind works versus, I'm not that old, but like the old school mentality of, just show up and we'll death by PowerPoint and then we'll fucking get through it or whatever. And this book kind of like is a deep dive into not doing that.
I was just going to say, do they have any thoughts on PowerPoint? That's my favorite part of expensive training.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. I don't know. That was like my entire military experience was just clicking through PowerPoints and not even paying attention to it. But
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, the back says there's a noticeable gap between the way officers are trained and how the brain processes information in the stressful and risky situations which police work.
Yeah, there's noticeable gaps in lots of things in that career.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like I'm speaking like from where I work. I work at a small place. We have we actually have like a pretty decent size of like newer, younger people like me coming in, like that are open-minded. I think the younger generation is a lot more open-minded. We're more malleable, I guess, and willing to, I guess, affect that positive change, if we're going to use that term. But I don't know. I feel like the old school mentality, and as long as, you don't get dredged down by the job, which I try not to, is, push for being open-minded and change really. And just with that too, like the DT program that I'm a part of it changes. It's not like fucking, I don't know what you guys use where you're at, but like PBCT or whatever, like that old school, like it's like a pyramid scheme of defensive tactics. It's absurd, but it's here's this one thing and this is how it's going to be for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's like, nope, the program I'm in, it changes every year. It's like they take what has worked and what doesn't work on the street, like anecdotally and shit like that, and they alter it and go from there. And I feel like that should be with anything, like leadership, firearms, like whatever it is, like be open to change, like understand like what works and doesn't work, and stop trying to pretend that shit that doesn't work works, and address the problem head on instead of trying to play the legal, though we're doing this for legal reasons. Well,
Yeah, that's it's a tough nut to crack.
it is, but that's what I enjoyed about the book, because it addresses like what works, how the mind works. And obviously scientists and shit, like I said, I'm not an expert in any of the shit, don't know, we're not like super keyed into, how the mind does work, but the science is developing, it's getting better every year. And if you tailor like what you're doing and how you retain information and how it's gonna come forward, then I feel like that's the best way to go about it. But the book was fantastic. It was, like I said, like top 5 that I read last year. I think I read like 50 books last year. So
Damn,
it's hard for me to remember.
That was in your top 5, the serpent, taming the serpent.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Kind of on the same topic, not law enforcement related at all. But I Love It Here was in my top 5 from last year as well. It's by Clint Pulver. I had him on the podcast as well. He actually owns a company called, God, what's it called? It's like Undercover Millennial or Millennial. Yeah, Undercover Millennial. And his company, essentially, like if you've ever watched Undercover Boss, how they will go, behind the scenes undercover, but mostly for TV and see what's going on. His company, they go out and they play, they get hired by larger corporations and they go to the various stores and stuff like that. And they play people that are interested in the job, right? So there's no like anything, stopping the employees there, because they don't know that this person's working for the company. So they're coming in, they're picking their brain of the employees, saying, hey, like, I'm thinking about applying here. Like, how do you like it? Blah, blah, blah. Well, a lot of people are super honest when it's a short-term conversation with somebody they don't know, that they don't think there's going to be any consequences for. Which, what I love about his company is it's completely anonymous. They don't fucking blast anybody, but they put together a presentation for the corporation. Once they're done with all their research at whatever stores they're hitting, they get, all the notes on what the employees do like, what they don't like. And the whole concept is like finding what you love and doing it, but it's tailored more for like, management. Whereas like we're saying, you've got, leadership that may be outdated, where they're looking at, selling or, looking at the customer versus like looking at their own employee base. And, one of the big topics in the book was, companies constantly, change their marketing strategies, change the way they sell shit, how they advertise, they change everything. It always changes, constantly changing with like how society's changing, but they don't ever fucking change how they treat employees. They don't ever change like, time off or like addressing employee needs, rather, because they don't care. But at the end of the day, that's actually costing them money. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody if they can address it. It's a win for the employees, obviously, if they have a better life at their job and they feel like they have, an employer that gives a shit about them, but also which keeps the retention high and keeps people wanting to stick around. I like to say, like, it's not all about money, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it's not all about money, right? Like, I want to be somewhere that I love, and that's the title of the book. I Love It Here. I want to be somewhere where I have fulfillment, I have meaning at work, and I know that's hard, especially like in the first responder community, to find, because you do have bosses that are old school. So if you can find a place that even just pays, right? I work for somebody, I'm not getting paid as much as some of the other metro areas where I am, but I like where I work. I have people that care about me. I have people that will allow me to go to outside training. You know, they'll fork the money over to send me to training that I want to go to, stuff like that, you know, stuff where they show that they give a shit. And that's what the whole book is about. Clint is a fucking fantastic guy. Like what he did to me, especially like at such a young age that he's at, his entire company is based off the fact that he's a millennial and he's fucking killing it. The fact that he was able to find that problem and address it and you know, create an entire business off of it, to me was just awesome. So I don't know if you guys have any experiences that are where you didn't love it, where you at, or hopefully found a place that you do love it.
Did I send you my book yet?
No, you haven't.
If you want to put your email in the chat here, if you're okay with that, I'll just email you a digital copy real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of, again, I'm holding my tongue. A lot of that is a bureaucratic problem. And I think, especially when it comes to businesses or agencies treating their employees differently, that one hits me deep in the feels. I completely empathize with that situation. That one's tough. Well, I don't think that's likely to change.
Well, you see it all the time, man. It'll change from company to company, but it's not gonna, you know, I don't know. I feel like obviously it's a black hole. Like if you're somewhere that's fucking shitty, man, you're just gonna get stuck, and you see it so much, and it's sad. But that's why I tell people, like people that are trying to get into law enforcement or fucking anything, it doesn't even have to be law enforcement, but I talk about law enforcement, like go out, do multiple route. Like if you're interested in agency, go do a ride along with a couple different cops and like pick their brain. You know, you get a few people, they'll fucking tell you the truth about how it is. And that's where I found where I'm at now, man. I went on a ride along and I talked with a couple of different other the deputies there, and they all seem pretty fucking happy. So I was like, you know, I'll take a shot. And I've been in my office for a year now, and so far I love it. So, but obviously things are bound to change at some point. You know, you're not going to have the same leader in position forever. But what Clint does is pretty outstanding, where he tries to actually acknowledge, you know, and address the issues at hand and fix it and give, not just like say, hey, this is the issue, but like, you know, guide management into the position where they can actually change their mentality to hopefully address some of those issues. So
it's a hell of a tall task.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, so far I feel like he's doing a pretty good job at it, at least. I mean, I guess whether or not the corporations in the long run take his advice and fucking implement it is up to them, but I guess he gets paid regardless.
That's so weird. You know what's funny? The first time I ever saw that was I was at the counter drug unit for the Coast Guard, and they hired someone to come in and teach just some defensive tactics for us. And they had some guy come in and teach Krav Maga to us. And so we were ordered to go outside to the basketball court in our PT clothes, and we get out there, and there's this like legit, like off the airplane Israeli guy, like you could barely understand him. And he's like, you kick this way, you punch this way, like multiple attackers, like here's what you do with a knife. And I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. And he's like, all right, lesson's over. He's like, let me know what you thought, and I'll let your command know what you thought. And 100%, as far as I remember, it was absolutely 100% of us were like, we need this in our lives. No, we liked it, a lot of us.
Oh, it was good.
Well, because our DT program was a federal law enforcement, like PowerPoint. You stand and you punch and you retract and you punch, you know, that garbage. So the Krav Maga stuff was much better. It was an improvement. So 100% of us told the command, we need this. And the days went by and the weeks went by and the months went by, and we never saw that guy again other than that very first day. And I thought, that's odd. And then I kept seeing that pattern pop up over and over again. In my research in other agencies too, I'd hear people, agents, you know, government places would hire consultants to come in. The consultants would go, you're doing this wrong and that wrong and this wrong. And they'd go, great, thanks, bye. Get out.
Yeah. Well, no, you know what the big thing that I liked about this book was, like, versus because obviously you were in the military. I'm sure you had those like stupid ass like command climate surveys or whatever they were.
Oh, I
where
love
they,
them.
hey, take the survey where you know fucking 90% of people lie on it regardless, right? Because your name's attached to it. And you don't want to fucking be, you know, treated like shit even more than you already are. Like what he does, it's not like, you know, it's not like, hey, you're here, take the survey. Like I said, it was like completely anonymous. The way that he approached it was unique. You know, it's not like a dude coming around and or like sending you an email saying like fill this fucking survey out every year, which I couldn't stand. I mean, everybody lied on those, you know it. So I don't know. Whereas this, it's like addressing that where it's like, why would this dude lie to this stranger? Like, like a normal dude working at like a store and you're like, hey man, like think about hiring, like working here. The dudes, most people are like, nah, I wouldn't. I mean, there's nothing to lose really with lying, I feel like, whereas, you know, like a command climate survey, if it's not anonymous, you do have a little bit to lose, which is fucking insane. I actually made a video after I read this book. Well, actually, I think it was midway through reading this book, maybe like 4 chapters in. I made like a 5-minute video where I talked about it. When I was in the police academy, we had to do a weekly survey, you know, like had to rate each class, rate what was going on, and then like, you know, type your comments about what could be improved or what was dumb, what worked, what was stupid, what needs to go, what needs to come. But your name's on it. It's not anonymous. And there was instructors that were literally talking to us about saying us making this not anonymous was the best thing we ever did. Cause now if you guys have an issue and you want to talk shit, you can just fucking say it to our faces. I'm like, are you dense? Because that is an issue. Like nobody's going to tell the truth now. Right. Whereas if it's an anonymous, because the thing is like, there's a hierarchy there, right? Like they're an instructor. We're a student. Us graduating this academy relies on them fucking passing us. And if they don't like us, I watched it. There was a dude they didn't like. They got him kicked out. So obviously the dude, honestly, though, was kind of a piece of shit, but they, but regardless, like there's that hierarchy there, right? Like I'm not going to do something. I'm not going to tell the truth to piss this instructor off to get kicked out of the academy to no longer have a career, you know?
Yeah.
So why would I tell the truth? If it's anonymous, I'll fucking tell you the truth all day, especially if you're in this like leadership student role. Like if it's peer to peer, I'll tell you the truth face to face, not anonymous, but I'm not going to jeopardize me losing my career. It's insane.
I specifically talked about that in my book, and I think it's on its way to you right now in an email, where the incentives to fixing problems, if it involves people that are either your peers or your supervision, so same or higher rank than you, the problem with fixing a bad employee or an issue with an employee who's done something bad or wrong is when you make that commitment to make that issue public or to bring that issue up to someone's attention, there's a risk involved where if it doesn't fix their performance or if it doesn't fix their bad behavior, then you have in essence attacked this person, and now nothing has been done, and now this person is more than happy to probably attack you. So it's kind of, especially when it's something severe, like someone doing something that should get them fired. If you're the one that speaks up about it and they don't get fired, what happens when they get promoted before you and you now work for them? So the incentive structure is set up so that you are incentivized to not fix problems when it comes to other people and bad behavior. So and I don't think that that's unique to law enforcement. I think that's a lot. I think that's bureaucracy in general, which surprise.
100%. And I say that a lot. Like I try and like lead things because I know that a lot of shit that happens in the law enforcement, like, you know, I guess hierarchy and everything, it does translate. It does bleed over to other worlds, but I do like to just kind of obviously talk about, because that's all I've known my entire adult life. I went right into the military as a cop and I've been a cop ever since. So, but I do know that shit is the same everywhere. Obviously, I have a lot of friends that aren't cops. I have a wife that's not a cop, and it's the same everywhere, man. And it's, I'm glad you brought that up because I honestly never even thought about it like that. That fact that if you're even with a peer, like this things you say to a peer, well, fuck, tomorrow they could be your boss. I didn't even think about that, dude. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's you're not incentivized to fix problems, period.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, no,
And,
I've been
and
going on.
And even there's a quote that I like to use, which is when a lot of bureaucracies of any type, private, public, whatever, when a bureaucracy, the action that they're tasked with doing, so the job that the bureaucracy is supposed to do, when bureaucracies accomplish great things, I think it's what's the word? I think it's often in spite of their climate and their organization instead of because of their organization. Law enforcement, hospitals, private security, a library, whatever. Sometimes great things do happen, but I think it's those rare examples of humans trying their best to provide a service or a product and fighting against their command or their management in order to make that happen, which is just insane to me.
It's draining. Yeah, for sure. It's draining. I don't know, man. It's just a weird world we live in where that's unfortunately the case. And it's just like, I wish I had the solutions to it. But I've been like, I don't know, recently, man, I've just been thinking a lot like locally. I've been so sick of everything like on a mass scale, everything pushed by the media on a mass scale, where it's like, I don't know. I guess our attention's diverted to like, oh, we need to worry about what the president's doing. Well, I feel like we should maybe focus on like what's happening in our own communities, and we can change our own communities, because that's the shit that's going to affect our lives, right? Like the big shit, it affects our lives minutely, but I feel like the shit that's closer to home affects you a lot more. So it's like, let's try and be positive there and like make those changes there, I know I've been going on tangents.
No, it's good. Most of my episodes, I try and do like half structured and half not structured. And if that gets all mixed up, super. I love it.
But I mean, I guess a good segue into, just having that kind of mentality is the next book that I have here. It's called The Stoic Cop by Bill Morrow.
Okay.
And you can relate this. Like I've read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Like if you're into Stoicism, I would 100% start there. I think that kind of lays the groundwork for what Stoicism is. This Bill Morrow, I had him on the episode on an episode as well. But I found this book good because there's no other book about Stoicism like relating specifically to law enforcement. But again, like a lot of this shit can bleed over really into anything. Obviously, I think you would know that being a cop is, can be taxing, and you can really get jaded, and you can really get in a fucking bad mindset. And like the last year or so that I was in the military, I was in a fucking horrible place, dude. Like I was super negative. I was mean to everybody. Like I was a dickhead to like everybody around me. Anybody that was like lower ranking than me, I was a dickhead to. And I think maybe that's part of it, right? Like people get that jaded attitude, people get burnt out, but they become assholes to like people below them, right? So like that's an issue that we were just talking about as your boss, they could be an ass, but maybe it's because they're burnt, and maybe they just don't have the tools and the assets and the resources to fix that. And I feel like after reading Meditations, and I read Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, which I feel like ties into Meditations. I feel like Marcus Aurelius was way ahead of his fucking time. Honestly, any like self-help books are pretty cliche at this point. A lot of them are cookie cutter and fucking copy and paste, but a lot of like good, even the good ones that you read, a lot of it talks about Stoicism, even if they're not talking about Stoicism, like inadvertently. And I didn't realize that until I read Marcus Aurelius's book. But Bill Morrow he honed it straight into like where he was at in his career, which is where I felt like I was at. I was super unhappy. I got out of the military, man. I fucking changed my entire life. I started reading heavy, which for me, we can talk about in a minute, like what that did for me, but just like adopting that Stoic philosophy, right? Like you can't change, like sometimes if you're stuck in that bureaucratic world, like you're saying, not everybody can get out of it, dude. Not everybody has that fucking option, right? So people got to do what they got to do to make ends meet. So like if you,
I'll definitely step on your toes there. A lot of people don't make the effort. A lot of people don't make the effort to get out of that.
Right. But I also like to say like if you read like 4 Hour Work Week or whatever by Tim Ferriss, I think is who wrote it. I think, I don't know. But that's like, it's like one of those things where it's like, is that even fucking applicable to the normal person? Right. You could bust your ass off to try and set up, this passive income and doing all this and working from home. Well, like what I love to do is I like being a cop, at least for now, but I tell people all the time, the point where I fucking don't like doing it, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'll find something else to do. I'm not going to be miserable. That's why I got out of the military. oh, why didn't you do 14 more years and get a retirement? Because I don't want to be miserable for 14 years, right? I don't want to.
That's exactly what I tell people. I did 11 in the military, and if I would have done one more year, I would have been dead.
Right. I don't fucking want to be that unhappy. Like, but then after like kind of studying, like, because if you look at it like it's a coin, right? You have that one side, but then you have the other side where it's like, what are you doing, right? Whereas me, if I'm not, adopting that mentality, and if I'm not realizing, oh, well, some of the shit that's affecting me is like brought on by myself. I'm not, not everything is an outside influence, which is a lot of what stoicism is. It's not letting outside influences affect like what is going on in your mind, right? It's, finding that balance where, right, if you're unhappy, like figure it out, obviously, but also realize that you can manifest your own happiness. Like you can do shit to bring you joy outside of the shit that's, bringing you misery. And realizing that a lot of that shit's up to you, right? Like you can, and you know how it is. Like if you're around somebody who's negative and pissed off, that shit's going to bleed over to you, right? Well, if you're like around somebody who's happy and positive, that shit's going to bleed over to them. So I feel like if I can bring happiness and shit to like my work where I have people that I work with that aren't always happy, but if I can be happy around them, then maybe I'm affecting that change on them too. And now they're going to go home happy. And then the fucking next day, we're going to have a great day because both of us are happy. So it's like, what are you doing, to be that change? And that's what I like about stoicism, man. It's kind of figuring out, what you got going on in your own life and kind of honing out like the bullshit and the negatives and figuring out, like what I was saying with that 4-hour work week is that's just not relevant to everybody, right? Like you can't do that. Not everybody can do that. And I know you're saying that you can work hard enough, but if everybody's working hard enough to do that, well, what is everybody going to do, real estate or something? Like you got to have people that are fucking hammer hitters, I guess.
My book's not for everybody. And
right.
I said that maybe a little late. I said it, I think in the last page of the book, but there's people that like their job. There's people that like the cubicle. There's people that maybe they don't love their job, but it is a good fit for them. Kind of like the people that will refuse a promotion because they like what their current job perks entail. I get that. And the book kind of is really negative towards that environment. But my book's not for people that love that job. It's also not for people that job's a good fit for them. And some people make the conscious effort, and this one's really common too. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
And some people make the conscious effort of going, this is really, really common. Just had a new kid, or I have a sick spouse or sick child, and this type of job has the healthcare set up. It would be really difficult for me to go somewhere else and save the same amount of healthcare money. And even that's not necessarily true. That's a chapter in my book. But if you make that intentional decision to stay in that bureaucracy, great. But I think the people that want to leave, I believe a lot of people in the marketing world talked about this, and this is not new. This is 10 years old advice that's 10 years old. If you like talking about the Smurfs, you can start a podcast talking about the Smurfs, and it might take you some time and some effort, and some sacrifice, but you could make a living talking about fucking Smurfs on a podcast.
Right.
You could do it. It's not free. It takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and people like to make excuses up. But yeah, I think if you want to leave your bureaucratic job, you certainly fucking can.
Oh, and I'm definitely on board with what you're saying, and I actually really respect what you're doing. And I haven't read your book yet, obviously, but I feel like having, an underlying idea of what it's about. And I'm on board because I teeter on that line where, like I'm saying, like I love my job now, but what happens when I hate my job? Well, a lot of people will fucking stick with it, right? I'm not that person. If I don't like my job, I'm going to find something else that I do like. And I think a lot of people don't have that attitude. A lot of people, especially, and again, like I'm reverting back to cops, but you look at a lot of cops that are like, I hate my job, but I'm going to stick with it. Well, why? Like, well, I'm not good at anything else. That's all I know. It's all I'm doing. Dude, if you're like, if you're good at being a cop, honestly, there's a lot of shit you're good at. Like you're already good with talking to people, probably not all cops. You're already good at writing reports, probably not all cops. So you're good at you're probably good at writing. You're probably good at speaking with people. You're probably like that shit translates to a lot of other things. And
I'm going to go off the deep end here, and we're going to go into conspiracy world. So I believe that whether by intent and design or on accident, I believe that especially the law enforcement world, I think that the retirement perk and that the a lot of privilege perks, I think it's a trap to keep unhappy people from leaving, if that makes sense. Which in
Yeah.
turn protects the bureaucracy or the people on top of the bureaucracy over the mission or the results or the public, which would be think about this. So one of my instructors, I've told the story a couple times. I show up to class one day. We're doing driving or traffic stops or a riot patrol or something. So I get into the classroom. And it's me and a bunch of other deputies. And the instructor walks in. Oh, I know what it is. We were in our pre-employment training or our stand-up initial training. So before we get our own little police cars, we're sitting in this classroom. The instructor goes, well, I hope you guys like it here. And if you don't, you better do your year probation and find another place quick, because there is no, NFL draft for deputies. Like, you can't just go to another agency and surprise, you're a lieutenant. He's like, you got to always climb the ladder. So get where you want and stay there. And I thought, why the fuck isn't there a draft? Why, if you had a town that wanted a good police force or security force, why the fuck aren't you looking for quality people and enticing them to work for you? It doesn't exist. And all the certifications required and licensing required and time and effort and permission. And honestly, no one's teaching fucking entrepreneurship in public school. So it is really, really, really difficult to leave that law enforcement career once you're in it, because there's so many incentives stacked against you, and the work and the effort, it's insurmountable for some people. So a lot of people, like, I think you kind of hinted at it, you're kind of trapped once you're a cop. And some people will say, yeah, I have nothing else I can do. Well, you do, but it takes a lot of fucking work because you've been trapped. You have if you want to be a psychologist, guess what, motherfucker? You're going to college again, probably more schooling after that, then more testing after that, maybe some internships, some whatever it is. It's not just plug and play. And you can do entrepreneurship tomorrow, but you should probably be building that and getting that moving before you quit your cop job. And that's what I talk to a lot of people about, is trying to start those things before you need them, so that when the day comes and you're driving your police car and you go, I just can't anymore, hopefully you have something that you've been building that you can turn that switch on high and start monetizing that.
Right.
I got off track there. Sorry.
No. Oh, you're perfectly on track, man. It's like what you were saying just a minute ago, though, like that, I don't know what word to use, but like the accolades, right? Like, oh, you're a cop, so you have this certain privilege. Well, I think that's a load of crock too. Like, I think a lot of cops get in this like mind space where, oh, I'm better than the regular person because I'm a cop. Well, it's like, nah, dude, you're a fucking person, just like the fucking dude working at McDonald's is a person. Like, you're no better than that person. So it's like, get in that mindset and realize that tomorrow you might not have this job. Tomorrow you might be that dude at McDonald's. Like, fucking figure it out, like if you want to do something else, you said, it takes a lot of work, but it's whether you really want it. If you really want it, you'll put in the time, you'll put in the work. My most recent episode that I released like last week, I think, is a dude I actually, I'm from Texas too. I'm from Fort Worth and he's from Fort Worth, and we both joined the Air Force at the same time. That's how I met him. Different job, different career field, but he's about to get out of the Air Force. He hit, you want to talk about me being in a bad place mentally? This dude hit fucking rock bottom, like financially, divorce, everything just hit him like a fucking wall, man. And he like got to this point where he's like, I got to do something. And guess what he did? He busted his fucking ass off. He found mentors. He went to real estate. He got his real estate license. So important. He got his real estate, and mentor, and we talk about that in the episode a lot too, is like finding that mentor. And honestly, and I'll bring it back to books, but if you can't fucking find that mentor, dude, turn to books, man, because you can find a fucking mentor and an author, and you don't even have to know them, and you can read that shit. But he fucking turned his life around, dude, and he's making bank. He's getting his pilot's license. Like, he's doing all kinds of cool shit now.
And with mentoring too, even if you don't have a full-time mentor that you're, spending 8 hours a day with, the cool fucking thing is, if you have an interest in something like starting your own tactical training company, which is really fucking popular, you can talk to people that are at the tippy top of their specialty field, and you can send them a DM and you can get a reply within seconds, which is something that was not a possibility 10 or 20 or 30 years ago.
Right. And I'll tell you right now, one thing that I didn't notice when I started the social media journey was like, I can reach out to people. Like you look at the numbers, right? And that's kind of what a lot of people will compare it to. And I've tried to stray away from that, right? But it's like, oh, me, I have 3,500 followers. Dude, I could reach out to somebody with 350,000 followers. Probably half the time I'll get a response back and they'll chat with me. And that to me was mind blowing. Like, how do you have the time? But these people will find the fucking time. Like, if you want to talk to somebody, people that care, they'll find the time and they'll talk to you. So
Yeah, there aren't a lot of people that teach what
it's
me and
cool.
Bubbers what we
But
teach, and I get DMs from people with no profile pic, no followers, no posts, and they go, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing," and I go, "Guess what? Here you go. Here's my advice." And
right.
I try to respond to every single DM. I think that's a really cool capability. That even though the internet is a tool that has a lot of negative strings attached, that is one of the really nice things about it, is that you can
Yeah.
build these connections instantly all across the globe.
Well, and you got to pick and choose what you're doing on the internet, man. I got off
Yeah.
Facebook just because I was so fucking fed up with like all the shit that I was following. So I restarted on Instagram and was like super specific with who I follow and shit. So if you fucking hone it right, dude, and you get your feed right,
Yeah.
like it'll be nothing but positivity. So, but that's what I'm saying, man. Like if people turn to books though, you can't find a mentor. There's so many lessons to be learned in books. Like there's all these failures that other people have experienced you can learn about before you make those same fucking mistakes, and that'll save you so much time in the long run. Like a lot of people, oh, I don't have the time to read. Dude, make the time to read, right? Because that time that you make to read could save you fucking thousands of man hours in the futures and thousands of man hours of failing, right? For the way whatever you'll miss out on because they're too focused on social media, or like their head somewhere else, or like they're watching Netflix. Well, it's like, yeah, watch Netflix, but fuck, read 10 pages a day, man. You'll be good.
Yeah, I used to read when I went on deployments. I used to have what I called my dead hooker bag, huge piece of luggage, and it had almost like a hidden like 4 or 5 inch depth of the whole luggage was on the bottom. It was just a one zippered compartment that you can put like a rifle or two in, and I stacked that thing full of books. And we'd start our 45-day deployment, and I'd bring like 9, 10, 11 books. And I was lucky enough that most of the teams that I deployed with, we'd read a book and pass it around. And so we had this kind of rolling library when we were on deployments. And I really liked that, but I had the time for it. I had 10 hours a day of standby. So wake up, work out, eat, standby. So I am insanely busy now, but yeah, there's no excuse. If I wanted to read more, I certainly could read a couple pages a night.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing too, like share the wealth, right? Like you're passing the books around. I created a library like at my office. So I just stacked it full of, specific books to like law enforcement, leadership, mental health, tactics, stuff like that, just different books, and people can check them out. So it's like, do something for the people around you, share the wealth, share what you enjoy reading, share shit that you think people will get out of it. And that's like my whole mission, man, is because I love reading so much. So I'm like, it brought so much to my life in the last few years. And that's how my whole fucking page started, was I had friends for my personal page reaching out, being like, hey, I read what you posted about. And I'm like, dude,
Cool.
if I have friends reading it, I'm like, let me start a public page where that's all I do. And hopefully like it brings something to other people. And so far it has. So, and that's to me is super important, is I guess helping people out, trying to get people that are interested in it, the right stepping stones to get there. So
Awesome. How do you do written notes? Do you read digital books, paperback books, both? Do you put tabs on the pages? How do you handle that process?
I mostly read actual like physical copies. I always hated audiobooks, but now that I'm on like patrol, I will listen to audiobooks a lot, like when I'm just cruising around. I don't read a whole lot like on my phone, digital copies. I used to, because when I was working for the marshals for like 2 years while I was going to school, I did like courtroom security. So I'd fucking sitting in a trial for 12 hours. I'd fucking be under the desk reading on my phone. But whenever the opportunity presents itself, like whatever format it comes in, I'll take it. I definitely prefer physical books. I don't know, something about like having it in your hand, I feel like is definitely different. Like the way you ingest it.
Yeah. And if someone
Um,
wants to burn your physical book, they got to take it out of your hands.
Right?
That's drives me crazy that this digital stuff. Some of the TV shows I watch, I'm kind of a super nerd, so I watch Futurama quite a bit. I've seen every episode about 30 times, and now I go online to a like a fan Wikipedia site and I read like the details of the episode, and then I'll watch the episode. And one of them, the last one I watched, they said the characters will say this 10 times in the episode, and they go, recently this episode was re-released for the public and all of those 10 sayings were cut from the scenes. And I'm like, huh, noted. Like this has been going on for a long time. And like
Well, that shit blows my mind. It's like Disney. Like Disney's fucking
Disney.
removing
Yep.
movies.
I was just gonna
Disney's
say
like
it.
firing people because of their beliefs. Like, who gives a fuck what their belief is, dude? Like, if they're a good actor or actress, like, and it's a good show, like, who the fuck cares? Like, I don't know. It's just virtue signaling at its best. But that shit happens with books too, though, dude. Like,
yeah,
I got a book. I haven't read it yet. I plan on reading it this year. Behold the Pale Horse, I think is the name of it. I don't know.
oh wow.
I want to read that one. I have it on
Bill
my
Cooper?
shelf. Yeah. But apparently the copy that you can buy now, the copy that I bought, I guess, unless I find somebody selling it for expensive, the original print, it's missing like, I don't know, fucking at least a chapter from what I read. Like people say like there's a lot missing. So I don't know. Because it was shit.
Call me after you read that one. I would love to hear your thoughts. Oof.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm gonna read it at some point. I'm definitely reading it this year for sure. But I've been this year trying to focus on like reading shit that I've been interested in reading for quite a long time. I kind of got stuck in this habit of like, another thing that I didn't know when I started this page was I was going to get a shit ton of free books. So people send me their fucking books all the time. So I'm trying to do the right thing but like, that's obviously the point of my page is like helping these like underdog authors who aren't like well known, you know, trying to get a little bit of exposure. So I spend a lot of my time helping those guys out and kind of neglect like the shit that I really want to read. And that's a book that I really want to read.
That's exciting. I've listened to hundreds of hours of his radio talk show, and really another guy that's ahead of his time. Are you familiar with any of that?
Not a whole lot. I've read a lot of Cliff Notes, but it's just like, I don't know, I've kind of gone down this like conspiracy-esque type rabbit hole where I'm like, man, a lot of this shit seems like it's fucking true. So I'm like, I better read this.
So what happens when someone can see things coming, says they're coming, they happen, and then that person gets mysteriously murdered for a weird reason? Huh.
But I'll tell you, I'm reading right now a book called Out of Control by Kevin Kelly, I believe is his name. This book came out in 1994. He was the editor I think he might have been like completely over, like the owner of Wired magazine. But this is one of the books. I don't know if I know you said you're a super nerd. Are you into The Matrix?
Love it.
Huge. I'm a huge fucking Matrix fanboy. I probably watched, now that the new one's out, but I probably watch the trilogy like once a year. Always have.
Same here.
Ever since a kid. But this book is one of like, I don't know, 2 or 3 books that inspired the actual movie. It's nonfiction. It's a massive book, dude. It's 500 pages of tiny print. Like it's hard to read because it makes me feel stupid. But because there's like so much shit in there that I'm like, what? And then it makes me feel smart knowing that I'm reading it. But it's pretty much like all this like theory of like man and machine and like how we're creating machine and how machine is actually a lot more like us than that we want to believe it is. And like a lot of the shit, which is crazy because the book's almost 20 years old now. And a lot of this shit in the book is like, fuck, like we're at where this book is like predicting where we're at. So it's kind of crazy.
There's another book. There's a book on Neo's bookshelf or on his computer desk in the first movie.
Simulaira and Simulacra.
Yep, that's it. Yep. You beat me to it.
Yeah, that's one that I want to read too. And then another book that I have on my shelf that I want to read this year is called Neuromancer, which I think is actually an older fictional book too, which also I believe helped inspire the movie. I think that's actually where the word The Matrix came from, was that book.
Did you see the latest one?
I did. And I know it got a lot of hate, but honestly, I enjoyed it. I didn't like the first like half hour because I'm like, where the fuck is this going? but I felt like it went good.
Yeah, I was
How about you?
expecting, well, if my expectation was actually really, really low for it, and I think the bar struck pretty medium for me, so I was impressed.
Yeah.
And I know some people that absolutely hated it, just really
Right.
pissed off.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it went to a good place because it's like, I don't know, people who've only seen the Matrix trilogy like once a year, dude, I watch it every year, and every year I feel like I learn something new from it. Like there's so much lore embedded into it
Yeah,
that,
there's a lot.
yeah. And like there's a lot going on, and it takes a lot of like repetitive watching to like really understand what's happening. So if you don't really understand what's happening, you might hate the movie. But I feel like it went in the direction of like where it should have gone. Whereas like people are like, oh, I thought he died. Well, it's like, yeah, the fucking one has died 50 times already. Like this is a continuous cycle, but he somehow broke the cycle. Like what makes you think the machines are actually going to hold their word and, not agree to it essentially versus just shoving it right back into the matrix and nobody would know the difference. So I thought it was kind of cool, especially since the machines like revolted and shit, but it was interesting.
Let's do. We're at about. I got plenty of time, but just so we don't forget it, why don't you give just a ton of your plugs and let everyone know where they can find you, or support you, or get in touch with you, or whatever. And then we'll see where we go
Yeah, I'm
after
pretty
that.
much mostly active on Instagram, just at Books Behind the Badge. That's DMs are always open. I post a few times a week at least. I try and post every day, but sometimes I have a new kid. I have a fucking infant at home, so life is a little bit busy right now. There. If you're in a podcast, I'm on Spotify. Don't do anything with it, but booksbehindthebadge.com. And pretty much it. If you guys are interested in anything that I read, or if you want any recommendations, let me know. Try and be a little bit specific with what you're looking for, though, because a lot of people will say, oh, I need a recommendation. Well, what I love could be a fucking paperweight for you, and what you love could be a paperweight for me. So you never know.
Fantastic. Why don't we end it there, and then if we can do some wrap ups off the recording here. Thanks so much for coming, dude. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought the back and forth was really enjoyable.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you inviting me on, man. I know that sometimes I was going off on little bits of tangents here, but for sure, I'm super humbled that you invited me on, man. It's definitely been fun and like sharing the word of the books, man. So anytime.
All right. See you around.